How's it going, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be repairing this crease, which is actually not your average crease. I've never seen anything like this before. You can see where the carbon is on both the rails and that carbon stringer. There's clearly a crack there, but you couldn't feel any of them. It was all beneath the glass, and none of the fiberglass without carbon beneath it had any cracking in it whatsoever that you could see or feel. So while it looked like a normal everyday crease that I would get in any day of the week, there was no delamination of the glass. There was no way water could get in. It wasn't soft. It all felt fine other than the slight dip where the crease was. So having a chat with the customer, we decided to just go ahead and re-glass the nose area and see if we can reinforce it enough to prevent any more flex or, God forbid, snapping. Any other crease I would get into the shop, at this stage we'd be doing a quick sand, but then with the knife we'd be removing broken and delaminated glass, seeing how much foam we have to replace and preparing for foam replacement. But with this particular job I was lucky enough just to be able to sand it really hard, and we're getting it ready for lamination straight away at this point. So this is where I'm going to start to get a little bit irritated. You can see this gunk here that I'm swiping away with my fingernail. This is some type of clear coat or gloss coat they put over these, not just JS, but these epoxy stringless pieces of crap. They put it over to make them look shiny, to make up for their poor construction, I imagine. But it melts when you're sanding it, and it creates little balls which stick to the surface, so it melts under the heat of the orbital. So now I've got to stop sanding it, let it cool down a bit, sand all these globlets away that are stuck to the surface. It takes so long to sand these boards and wastes so much sandpaper. Any other board preparing for lamination like this would be sanded with 120. This is sanded with 80 grit and it still takes forever. Finally now done with all that nightmarish prep sanding, so we are ready to prep for lamination finally. Now the strongest part of a surfboard, aside from its wooden stringer, if it has one, is the rails. This one obviously doesn't have one. It's got carbon strips, and I can tell you they are doing absolutely nothing, which is why we're in this position to begin with. So it's really important that when we laminate it, our cloth wraps the rails, because those rails on this board are essentially acting as the stringer for the board. So we really want to reinforce those rails well to prevent any further flexing, creasing, snapping. So with masking tape on the other side of the board, pretty much at the tuck, we're able to wrap this cloth around the rails. So what I'm going to do here is, over the crease itself, the weakest spot, I'm actually going to put 4 ounce, and then over this little 4 ounce patch I'm going to put 2 ounce, and that 2 ounce is going to run all the way from the nose to a few inches beyond our little patch. This way we're basically assuring that with the 4 and the 2 ounce over our weak area, our creased area, that's 6 ounces of cloth we've put, but all around the rest of it we're only putting 2 ounces. So we're not adding a ton of weight, but hopefully we're adding an appropriate amount of strength or reinforcement. Our 2 ounce runs all the way to the nose of the board, just so we don't have an area where the cloth is stopping and potentially creating another creasing point. And then down towards the middle of the board, of course, we're not cutting a straight line rail to rail, we're creating a V out of that cloth to try and taper off that potential fracture point. So we never want a straight line of cloth, and if we can avoid a line at all, like we have on the nose, then that's even better. Pretty easy glassing job, this one. Just make sure that whenever you've got a smaller patch under a bigger patch of fiberglass, just make sure you work all of the air out of that smaller patch. It's really easy just to focus on the top patch, and then when you're cured you find out you haven't fully saturated or fully flattened the patch underneath. So just make sure you focus on that and push all that air out and fully saturate it. Being epoxy, we're going to leave that overnight and come back the next day, and then we're going to cut our tuck. It doesn't have to be overly neat and tidy, this cut, because it's epoxy. We have to sand it before our next coat anyway to feather that cloth edge back and key it so the resin has something to stick to. So we're keeping it as neat as we can, but it is going to be feathered with the sander in a minute. Once we've got that masking tape cut away, we can start sanding. This is with 120, so we're just feathering away the edges. We can go pretty hard on the fiberglass cloth edges, but we want to go pretty gentle on the rest of the cloth. You don't want to be sanding away the cloth that you've just put down, but you want to scuff it up a little bit just so your next coat has something to stick to. So go hard on the edges of the cloth. We don't want any shiny spots, we want it all blended into the board, but just run over the rest of the board quickly just to scuff it up. These EPS high performance boards are easily the worst boards to work on. The construction of them isn't good. No matter how good the shape is, or the rail line, or fin boxes, anything like that, the construction and the way the materials are used and what the materials are is just poor, and it makes repairing them really difficult. From EPS foam just being the least suitable material possibly to make a surfboard out of, to even this stage of sanding or final sanding, sometimes boards like this are so underglassed that you end up sanding through the glass next to your repair, sometimes at the very last stage. So they're just an absolute nightmare to deal with. I was talking to a mate the other day who fixes boards down in Auckland, and he was saying he's thinking about charging a $50 surcharge on boards like this. They're just such a hassle. Built to fail, destined for landfill, the worst to work on. You can give me a 50-year-old dunger any day, I'll be happy to work on it. High performance EPS, more often than not, a nightmare. That's my rant over with. Anyway, we are a little full in the glassing shed today, so I'm actually going to do the resin coat on this board on these horizontal racks. So just masking off here along the rail. This is going to be a 2-day pour because 24-hour curing time. So we'll do the top side today, bottom side tomorrow. Just leveling off the tail of the board here so that our resin isn't all running towards the tail pad. And then we're going to pour epoxy on every single one of these boards all in one batch. Brief intermission, you guys. This is watch time from subscribers in the last 28 days, and as you can see, 70.6% of you are not subscribed. Cheer to the legendary 29.4% who are subscribed, but if you're part of that 70.6%, come on guys, get with it. Press the subscribe button now. Doesn't cost anything to do, it's 100% free of charge, helps me out, so just hit them. Alright, you see that hard edge that the tape's created just there? We're going to sand that away smooth, and we're going to sand maybe an inch or two around to the side of the board we poured. So then this next coat of resin will cover the rails again, which will give us a little bit more coverage of resin on both rails, which will mean we've got a little bit more to sand on our final sand, and also we're going to get a fraction more strength out of it by the end, hopefully. Same deal as the top side, we're going to mask those rails off, mask our edges, and get ready to pour some resin. A little bit less though this time round. Same dealio as the end of most of the videos. We're going to sand it starting with 120 with this one, then 240, then 320, then 400 wet, 600 wet, and I might have gone to 800 with this one, but you can go as far as you want. Give it a dry off and we're ready for polish. I wish I could give you some crazy before and after image here, but because we've done pretty much a clear repair, the board looks exactly the same as it did. It just doesn't have a giant crease through the middle. But hopefully the board's reinforced enough. If I get a standard sort of crease in, we will definitely run over how I would usually fix a crease if it was a more usual scenario than this one was. But hopefully this lasts our customer. He's a backpacker traveling around New Zealand, so I hope he scores some good waves. If he's watching this, cheer to you, and safe travels. I don't always re-wax a customer's board after a repair, but I've got a soft spot for backpackers, so if it helps them out, I'll rub a bit of wax on the board to get them straight back in the water if I can. And that's it, another one done and dusted. On to the next. I think the next video is going to be a paint job of a clubby kneeboard, a full respray of the entire thing, which took a decade to finish and will probably take even longer to edit. So it might be a little while until the next one, but until then, make sure you hit the subscribe button, it's very helpful. Leave a comment if you've got any questions, do the like button thingy, and we'll see you in the next. Cheers for watching, guys. Chee-hoo!